Hello folks and welcome to Tippcast with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by Shane Brophy, Head of Sport at Nina Guardian, and delighted to say for the first time we've Eamon Corcoran, former Tipperary hurler, on the show as well. How are you, gents?
Good, lads.
Eamon, how's things with you? Anything strange lately, covering all the matches, I suppose?
Yeah, obviously got to all the matches there at the weekend, and Club has been great as well. Any matches we missed there, I don't think they're too happy at home now because I mirrored onto the main telly at home, and the kids are put into the room most nights so I can sit back and watch the matches over the weekend. But I think it's been a huge addition, not just to Tipperary, but right across the other counties. I see Kilkenny there at the moment, so it's getting huge profile to our game, and I think we've all benefited from it.
Yeah, huge amount of games, Shane, as well. And I suppose the frustration for you, and you know, there's obviously a very good reason for it, but the Lower game, not the first time that you've had a game put off your game against Cashel King Cormac's.
No, 10 o'clock last Saturday morning, we got the text coming through that the game was off. And this was the second time it happened before the quarter-final as well. I suppose, look, some things are bigger in sport, and deepest sympathies to the Maloney family in Cashel on Timmy's pass. And I suppose, look, by all accounts, he was a great club stalwart and has a son on the team, and it was probably instrumental in maybe getting Cashel back on the upward curve that have been maybe over the last 5 or 6 years, right from underage and up through adult levels. So I'm sure it's been a tough week for them, and sure we'll go at it again on Sunday in Toomevara. And like, I suppose, look, the way it worked out, the way the weather was on Saturday, it was, Jesus, I don't know how I ended up watching Moneygall and Kilsheal and Moneygall and Borris-Ileigh, and God, the conditions were terrible. And I'd say even then I watched Killenaule and Brackens, and I'd say there looked like there was a couple of puddles there in the rag too. Probably was barely playable. Like, so look, I suppose in one way, the way it worked out with the weather, probably was no harm to get the game wasn't played.
Yeah, Eamon, let's start off with Kiladangan we'll start off with Thurles Sarsfields against Lockmore Castleiney, 122-212. It was on TV under lights, but this great form that we've seen from Thurles, it's just continuing on, and Dara Stakelum, he's on fire again, 6 points, all from play. Like, Thurles are on fire.
Yeah, they are, and look, it was a game where we were all probably hoping it was going to be tighter. It was on RTE, and I think from the word go, I know it was 1-6 to 8 points at half time. Brooker got to go with, but Lockmore never seemed at any stage that they were going to actually push on. Don't underestimate the loss John Maher has been to Lockmore this year as well. Like, they lost John McGrath last year. In fairness, they tend to not do excuses and they get on with it. But he was a huge loss because they've leaked an awful lot this year, Lockmore, in the group stages. But just going back to Sarsfields, I saw a lot of Sarsfields this year. They were playing a Neen up here in Borris-Ileigh. I saw them against Killenaule. I mentioned Dara Stakelum. Like, he has been with Billy McCarthy there as well. I give him his due. There's been 2 or 3 club players this year that have stood out, and Darren stood out, and he was on fire again last Saturday night. But Thurles, outside of the first game against Killenaule,
I think we lost him in there.
Just he might come back in. So
yeah, we'll get him to click back in again. Shane, what were your thoughts on it? Like, 122-212? It was fairly comprehensive.
Yeah, it was comfortable. I suppose as Eamon, I'd agree with. Like, it wasn't a game that we would have hoped for. I suppose the heavy rain during the day, and like we saw the images beforehand of the, I don't know what you call that machine, that the spiker is it or whatever, that you see the water that was coming up, like, and I'd have my view that, look, I think hurling under lights, maybe it has to be done sometimes. I'm not sure at county semi-finals whether it suited, and the crowd looked very, very small as well, and that didn't help. And I know in a big stadium like Semple Stadium, it gets lost. But back to the game, like Lockmore, from the word go, that didn't look like they had that bit of spark, and look, you could point to the fact that maybe they've had a busy time with football, and surely there's no doubt that maybe that bit of zip was probably gone out of them, and they just. But even for Lockmore, like their first touch and everything, and the balls were coming and they were dropping out of their hands. Like a Lockmore team on fire, if the ball is into their hand, the ball is in their paw and gone. Like so, and that wasn't the case. And look, against Sarsfields, you really have to be on your game. And like I thought it was another good, strong performance by Thurles. Another performance where it's not as Sarsfields of old, where all the skills and the points and goals for fun and wonderful. It's a real Paddy Maher team, nearly where they squeeze the life out of the opposition and just kill you by 1,000 cuts with Dara Stapleton and Aidan McCormick and like Billy McCarthy in at full forward. He reminds me of when that first Cashel team came through, I think, and our Thurles team in 05 was it Shane Ryan played full forward. He wasn't the best forward in the team, but he knitted the whole thing together. And I just think, well, Billy probably with the knees, probably not never going to go back to the player he was, but his physical presence and his ability just gels that whole forward line together at the moment.
Yeah, Eamon, we lost you there, so I'm not sure if you can remember where you were with your point, but whatever you were thinking about Thurles, plus like Dara Stapleton, did you know he was an inside forward? Because in recent years we've seen him probably play midfield and maybe wing forward for Thurles at times.
Yeah, even at club level coming through, you would have seen him midfield out in the half-hour line. But the damage he's causing inside at the moment, and like a player we haven't spoke much about this year's championship, Conor Stapleton. Like Conor, for me, he's work rate. As I said, a few games I've played, like he is actually in the middle of the field. He's up and down the field. He's hooking and blocking. So, like we speak about Ronan Maher, you were talking about Billy McCarthy there, Aidan McCormick, but Conor Stapleton, he had a very good year with Tipperary. But I think he's a player that we nearly underestimate at club level and what he's doing. And that's back to Shane's point there, what Paddy has instilled in this team. Like the Sarsfields teams gone back over the years, they've all lovely hurlers. Their first touch, everything. But you combine the brilliant basics with that what Paddy's instilled in them. They're a serious outfit at the moment, and I think, look, from outside the first game, as I mentioned earlier, against Kiladangan, where Ronan Maher was missing, and you take Ronan Maher and he keeps.
Yeah, and like you take that first game against Kiladangan, like that came a week after Sars won a mid-final, and then Kiladangan had lost the North final. And Kiladangan were probably coming in with a bit of an edge after a loss, and just things can happen. And Ronan Maher was missing, like so. I maybe I say not taking anything away from Kiladangan's win that day. Would probably, there's no doubt, it was a little false in terms of what we saw, and I think we'll definitely see a way tighter game on Sunday week.
And Shane, like, who would have impressed you outside the obvious? You know, we've talked about the Stapletons and Aidan McCormick got 1-6, 1-2 from play. Anyone else impressed you?
I should look. Stephen Cahill's form over the last few weeks has been really, really good. Like I thought he maybe he's been slow to get going in the campaign, but he's picked things up. Like their full back line, really, really good now. Which one of the Mahers or somebody? There's so many Mahers in Thurles.
Paul, Dennis, Stephen are the three.
Paul, yeah, I thought Paul particularly has had a very, very strong campaign. James Armstrong on the wing, like they're just well set up. And then you have like Shawnee Butler has had a very, very good campaign as well. So look, and then they have guys coming off the bench to finish it. Look, when you're able to put a team out there and Paddy Creedon can't even find a place in the starting 15, like you have their Premier Intermediate team are in a final as well, like, and like most of their lads, those lads would walk into most club senior teams, like, so like they're well set up at the moment.
Yeah, so Eamon's clearly having a small bit of trouble just with the connection at the moment. But it's interesting, you mentioned one side, Thurles brought on David Corbett, Paddy Creedon, Tommy Doyle, Jack Darby, Keane Stapleton, and some of those lads have been starters in the last couple of years. The obvious ones that stand out are David Corbett and Jack Darby, who've started plenty of times in the past. The other side then, Lockmore only used one sub in the entire game, so that kind of tells you the strength that they feel that they have in the panel just now.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt. Look, we can't overestimate it. And like and then Frankie McGrath mentioned it in his comments after the game, that he mentioned the fact that Joey Hennessy and John Maher were missing this year. And like, that's your number 3 and your number 6. And like, you're plugging holes. And you just look at the goal Thurles got at the very end to concede it. Like, was there 4 Thurles forwards bearing down on goal with only one Lockmore defender between them and the goal. Like, just the balance of the backs never seemed right. And Brian McGrath, I'm not sure if he's a pure 6. I think he's a better 7, like, on that team. So look, I thought they did brilliantly well to get to the semi-final. And like, I don't think their window has closed. Like, I think if they can get their best team, if they can get everyone available next year, Kieran Connolly maybe gets a good winter of training, Ed Connolly, maybe if there might be another gem or two, maybe that's is eligible after minor. Like, I'd say that they won't be far away next year. Yeah,
they always seem to find a player too. Credit to Kieran McCormick, I should say, for the finish for his goal. Like, I thought it was gas. It looked like he was, normally people run towards goal when they're going to strike. He was almost running away from goal and still managed to get a great strike. So fair play to him. I'm just wondering, like, looking at this Thurles team, it's maybe even when Borris-Ileigh won it back in 2019, I don't think Borris-Ileigh looked like a team that was going to get to an All-Ireland final at that stage. But they grew into the season and obviously it was brilliant. I mean, I obviously really enjoyed it. But like, this Thurles team looks like the real deal straight away. Now, I'm not jumping too far ahead. And, well, I am in a way, because I think they just look like the real deal. Kiladangan will be licking their lips here and all that. But like, this Thurles team looks as complete a team that we've seen in a Tipperary championship in a while.
There's no doubt. I think they're more. I think they're more set up for winter hurling now. Like, I think that's the way I would look at it. If they do get through a county final and into Munster, I think they have the physical players that would be able to stand up to a lot of those battles. Like, in fairness, look, they did win a fair share of games in Munster. They beat Ballygunner, I think, one year in Walsh Park, but like, there was also some games where they lost to Ballyea, and you said, God, how were they losing to Ballyea? They have more talented players, but Ballyea were just able to get down and dirty. I do think Thurles have more of those players that when the pressure comes on, they'll be able to stand up to it. But look, they have to get through Kiladangan first. And look, looking ahead, if you think if whoever Kiladangan or Sarsfields gets through in Munster in a semi-final at home against the Clare champions, like, there's a great chance of at least getting to a Munster final. Like, I suppose the big guns, particularly the Limerick and Waterford teams, will be on the other side. And so look, I suppose it's a huge prize for the winners on Sunday. I think they have a bye to the semi-final. They have nearly a month. They can have a good blasted celebrating and then refocus again for Munster. So it's massive for both teams.
And actually, no matter who wins it in Clare as well, it's going to be an unfashionable champion, would say, as well this year. The big guns are knocked out. Eamon, I don't know, are you in some sort of a mini climate there?
I'm here in Borris-Ileigh, and I don't know what it's out the joys of being live, isn't it?
It sure is. We were just talking about Thurles and how far they can go, because like, they look like a fairly, and I know it's getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but it's hard to see what they don't have. The class up front, the physical players, game plan seems to be very good. Like, and not to talk too far ahead, but it just feels like they're one of the most kind of solid Tipperary club teams we've seen in a while that could do well outside of Tip.
They could, and you look at their Premier Intermediate team, like Kiladangan, when a few years ago when they were going strong, your second team is going strong. Look where they are at the moment. And we've gone through players, even the number of players, Tommy Dial, that they brought on this year. And a player we have mentioned is Paddy Creedon. Like, Paddy was inside the Tip setup this year, and he hasn't seen much game time. One or two things may happen. I don't know. We haven't seen much Paddy Creedon overall. So, Sarsfields are the team at the moment that if they do get out of Tipperary, they could go on a run. But look, they're not even thinking that at the moment. They have a huge game against Kiladangan in the final. But definitely, for me, it's the first time in a number of years that I've took a step back and seen a team that, if you look at all the attributes, they're ticking most boxes.
And then I suppose if we jump on to the other game, Kiladangan against Toom, so it was 9 points in it for a finish. And Eamon, you were doing co-commentary for Clubber on it. Billy Seymour was on fire again, 6 points from centre forward. He's had some season.
He has, yeah. I don't know, can you still hear me, lads? Sorry, can you still hear me, lads? Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, Billy Seymour, we were joking before we were joking about Billy Seymour before the game. Could he get man the match again? And actually, when I gave it to him, the whole place was laughing about it. Actually, but like he stood up. But Kiladangan, yeah, going into the game, I didn't actually know what stage Kiladangan were in the championship this year. I found them hard to read. Borris-Ileigh blitzed them in the first half there over Nina, and outside of, was it Lazarus, Brendan Maher, we laughed about it at the time. Come on, which wasn't a great sign for Kiladangan. But then the last day, they were definitely on it. Right from the word go, their movement in the full back line, half back line, working through the lines. I thought they were exceptional. I like Alan Flynn back at 6. I know Joe Galler went over to the wing. I think that worked. But Billy was on it again. And when obviously Barry was sent off, Dara went in goal. It was the next two plays were going to be key because the crowd were up. Everyone's expecting Toom to make a run at them, and Billy got the next 2 scores. He showed an awful lot. He struggled last year. He came back from America. I called that out 2 or 3 times. I saw him against our own team, and he went back a bit. But this year, he's putting his hand up in every game. But not just outside of Billy. I think right across the board. Willie Connors is lost for Kiladangan too at the moment. I thought he was going to start. He didn't start. So they have a bench as well. I think we're in for an intriguing final. And I was asked for a prediction at the end, and I'm leaning slightly.
And Shane, then I suppose like Billy Seymour for yourself, do you think he can get a recall back to the Tipperary panel?
Oh, I would think he's probably nailed on at this stage. He has the physical attributes. He's been, if there was a senior club hurler of the year, he's definitely in the frame for it. Like, he's just, as Eamon said, like just that period after the red card, like Billy sort of came into his own, hit a couple of points of play, and he also won a couple of big frees. Like he took one belt going to go trying to break through with a ball, and I just said, Jesus, like when the fat was in the fire, he was the one. But look, that's not to say other guys didn't. Like, I thought from the minute one they were on it and really revved up. They scored, and like even the way with Darragh McCarthy, have I lost you? Even the sort of way they sort of picked on Darragh McCarthy in the first 10 minutes, like they sort of left a couple of ones on him. And look, in fairness to Darragh, he took them, and I suppose if there was something that maybe Toomevara would probably learn maybe for next year, is that Kiladangan sort of picked on Darragh, and he was given as good as getting, but nobody came in to protect Darragh. Like if that was the old Toomevara team, they would have been in there in packs and maybe making a bit of a meal out of it and things like that. So look, I'm sure that's an element of where Toom will be looking to maybe learn going forward. But back to Kiladangan, I thought from all over the field, from Barry, his puck outs were excellent, I suppose, right up to Brian Mallochny, he was excellent, very, very sharp. Until I suppose he was the forward that was sacrificed when they had to bring Dara Egan into the goals. And like, I thought Dan O'Mara's after coming back into a bit of form there in the last couple of weeks. And I think back in 2020 when Kiladangan were going well, Dan O'Mara playing well in that forward line is like he's probably the least heralded of the 6 forwards up there, but his presence when they're going well is very, very important.
Yeah, I think it was 10 scorers that Kiladangan might have had, so it was a real panel effort there. But yeah, who impressed? Like Paul Flynn again, like 1-3, and actually lovely little assist from Declan McGrath.
That's gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it was always interesting to put him back closer to the goals. Like he wasn't full forward. He was sort of in that little pocket behind the half forward line, and he was very, very effective. Look, I think Alan Flynn going back to centre back has definitely improved things. Like they had started him in midfield and in the earlier rounds, but I just think the whole half back line midfield area just looks more secure at 6, and he is given license to get forward. If he gets a ball and he sees a pocket of space, and maybe he can give a hand pass off and take a return pass, like Joe Gallagher will cut across in from wing back to fill that centre back spot if Alan takes off up the field, and even Declan McGrath will sit back as well. So look, I thought he's had another very, very strong campaign. And like I was chatting to him after the game, and I was just asking him like your own personal thing, and he being dropped last year from Tip, and how sometimes a player can maybe sulk and a player can use it as fuel. And he was saying, it did really give me a bit of drive this year. And like, I just asked him straight, I said, if you got the call, would you go back in? He said, absolutely, I would. Like, he was hurt by it. Like, and I did think it was one of the stranger decisions of Liam Cahill maybe not to keep Alan Flynn, because like he's just so ultra reliable. Like, he may at inter-county level, he probably not, but you just need good solid guys there sometimes that you know what you will get out of them every day of the week.
Yeah, Eamon, did you drive out to Templemore to get a better connection?
I actually went back out, up into the guys, it just keeps cutting in and out. Apologies here, I don't know what's wrong.
Yeah.
Not at all. But the Toomevara Kiladangan game, like, where do you think Toomevara came up a little bit short? I know you were doing the co-commentary.
I thought they stood off Kiladangan quite a bit. I think if you're playing Kiladangan, you need to be in their faces. I commented a few times the first half, Joe Gallagher had time to take a step back and pick out the ideal ball into the forward line, where that intensity wasn't there from Toomevara at times where they really needed it. And also, like, they relied an awful lot on Darren McCarthy. Like, Darren McCarthy still under 19, and an awful lot they were putting through him. And then Joey Mulloughney's back. Joey Mulloughney's not a young guy coming in, and he was probably their top player in the back line too. So I just think a lot of the players didn't get up to the pitch of the game overall. They'll be disappointed. Adam Hall, he's very young. They took a chance to start it. It didn't work out. He scored 2-3 the last day. I don't think he's anything to be worried about. He's a very, very bright future. But overall, I think they didn't stop the Kiladangan running game. It was the first time this year Kiladangan, they were working the ball really through the lines. Full back line, half back line. Fergal Hayes made a run from number 4 at one stage and up corner forward. So they were just playing with that whole freedom. And Toomevara struggled to actually stop that running game.
Yeah. They didn't bring it out, especially their half forward line. The Toom half forward line did well on the ball, but then they didn't bring enough pressure off the ball. Like, it was too easy, to say, for Kiladangan to work the ball up through the field. And look, I think there's no doubt, like, they needed Jack Delaney to have a big game. Mark McCarthy got 2-1. He did his bit. So they needed Kevin McCarthy was good. Like, and look, Jesus lads, I haven't been as excited about a forward in Tip in a long time as Darren McCarthy. Like, he's the real deal, and fingers crossed now he doesn't get a bad injury or does, like, he just minded us. Like, he had 3 different markers on him in the first half, like that, and sometimes he was in the full forward line on his own. Like, he had the Kiladangan full back line in fits. Like, he was very, very good.
But Eamon, like, if you're to talk about some of the, like, we've touched on it a little bit in terms of, like, you're saying that Toom didn't get into Kiladangan's face. We're looking at probably a couple of teenagers starting in the forward line, a couple of other lads for Toom. They might be big lads, but not necessarily lads who go out and throw their weight around. Like, the Toom team of old, they used to go out and they were as ignorant as pigs, you know, in a good way, I suppose, in a winning way.
Yeah.
It's not a very ignorant Toom team. Is that fair to say?
No, but it's a different game now. It's a different era. Like, I'll never forget 3 years ago, I was taking over the Brackens, and we were playing this short game, and I said, Jesus, lads, get the ball into full forward line, drive it in. I did it for 2 or 3 games, and our lads couldn't play it. They struggled with it. And then I had to adapt, and people like it or hate to work it through the lines. It's hard to get into people's face when the pace of the game now has just gone so fast. In the past, you're right, that the Pat Kings, Tony Delaney's of this world, Brislands, Lord God, there's things happening everywhere all over the field. But now it's hard. Like, you try and push up, and the touch, the basics are right now. You very seldom see fumbling anymore. Like, there's no rucks because everything is moving at pace. So it is hard. And when I'm saying getting into their face, it's just, if you play a sweep or you play someone sitting back, Josh McCarthy sat back a bit, it creates that overlap, and Kiladangan were allowed to get off the early puck outs, and so they pushed back, and that allowed the running game. So there was times, probably Ken the lad said, we probably need to push right up and stop and just go man for man and try and stop that running game and not create an overlap. But it can be difficult. But you're right, going back, that raw, I won't use the word ignorance, but what Toomevara had, they had something that was there. But I wouldn't knock this bunch of players. I don't think they're lacking that. Certainly that heart all year. Like, you look what they did in the group games. They blitzed nearly every team. And give them their due, right up to the very end, it didn't feel like they ever had a chance of really winning the game, but they never gave up. And there was one big call.
Yeah, 9 points is not like that was harsh on Toom. Like they were closer than that. Like just the probably heads went down towards the end, and like particularly after the Dara Egan save from Darren McCarthy. Like, geez, that was an incredible save.
I think Shane is after freezing up there for a second, or am
I don't know what's going on. But just on that, there's a moment at one stage, Shane, that it felt, I don't know, I look back, was it a penalty? And that would have actually brought it back to 2 points. So it was 5 points in at that stage, and that looked like a big moment in the game. It could have been given as a penalty. And if that happened, then we wouldn't know. So Shane is right, 9 points was probably unfair. But I think every time Toom made a run at them for actually to try and bring the score back, Kiladangan just went back up the field and seemed to get an easy score and put it over the bar, and the intensity was taken out of the game again.
Like, Shane, in fairness to Toom, like just if you were to wrap up there, you're like to get to a semi-final was probably ahead of expectations maybe for Ken Dunn. Like, and look, if they could get Jason Ryan back next year, Alan Ryan, maybe Blood, maybe 1 or 2 more. This one, like, they have a massive game at Holy Cross in the under-19 county final next Saturday. Like, that's going to be a cracking game. Like, if they could maybe, like, Adam Hall will be a year older, Sean Flaherty is a year older. Like, they're going to be thereabouts now for a good few years. Like, they have a great management team there, like one of their own. Ken Dunn knows what's needed. Like, so I've no doubt they'll build on this.
Shane, a lot of talk then in the last couple of days about whether Dara Egan was listed officially as a sub, and obviously he came on and, you know, he got himself a point, and, you know, obviously he's got a very long, good puck out on him as well. So there's some talk, you know, and the rumour mill is what it is, the talk of a complaint being lodged and all that kind of stuff, but it's unlikely that anything really is going to happen here.
No, I suppose I don't know the ins and outs of it, and I'm not going to try, because like this is Dara Egan, who's leads Kiladangan. Like, this is not just an outsider who just landed in and you're bringing him off the bench. Like, it's like the match program. He wasn't listed on the match program as a player, but the match program is irrelevant. If he was listed on the referee or the sheet that was issued to the referee, he's fine. Like, and even at that, even if he wasn't, what if Toom to game maybe by like they were beaten. Like, if it was tight, you'd say something, but like they were well beaten. I don't think anything is going to happen in this. I don't know whether this is somebody looking at the program and seeing Dara wasn't listed as a sub and not realizing that the program really doesn't. The program isn't the document in terms of the official document that's given to the referee. That's a completely different thing. Like, so
yeah. Well, Eamon, now if you were in Toom's boots and, like, assuming that he wasn't officially listed, you know, when the notes were handed over to the referee, like 18 minutes to go, only 5 points between the team. Like, it could have been decisive. It may well have been decisive. Can you hear me there, Eamon? Oh, I'm not sure you can. But yeah, Shane, that point though, like, there was 18 minutes to go, plus a little bit of injury time. There was only 5 points between it. So the idea of saying, you were well beaten and all that kind of stuff, like, who knows how it would have panned out if somebody who was, let's say, a converted outfielder or somebody who doesn't have a great puck or someone who panicked was on the pitch. Yeah.
Well, I would say it is like Dara has been their sub goalie all year. He's played in all the league games when Barry Hogan wasn't available. So I'd be surprised if the team sheet didn't have him enlisted. So. Look, I would say, look, if he was a big name that was trying to be transferred into the club in the last few weeks, and you maybe say something, but no, he's as Kiladangan as they come. Like, so I'd be surprised if there's anything to it, and I'd be surprised if Toom made anything to it.
Yeah, have you any thoughts on that, Eamon?
No, I'd agree with everything Shane says there, to be honest with you. If it is, sometimes it's not listed on the programme and the name may be on it. We don't know that, only the referee, Kiladangan and Toomevara. But if the game,
I think unfortunately we're having too many problems with Eamon. Maybe he'll come on once more, but
make a hands to the broadband boys in Borris-Ileigh.
Yeah, I know it's a little bit disappointing, but we'll go through the relegation and what happened, I suppose, over the weekend as well. We'll maybe come to the Killenaule Rossmore against JK Brackens game second. Maybe he'll come back on there. But what did you think of Killerwan's performance against Upperchurch Stromban?
Yeah, I suppose from the few bits I was able to see, I thought it was a strong performance. Like, there were always, like while it was tight, they were all there. I don't think they were ever really led, even though I think Upperchurch got back level midway through the second half. I suppose the 2 goals Kiladangan got were decisive in the end. I think Willie Cleary's one in particular was very, very good. I suppose Toom were fresh, or Killer One were fresh. Like they would have had a couple of weeks to really focus in, and like they had practically everybody available last weekend, and it just shows you how it was a big deal for them. I'm sure. Look, they didn't want to be involved in a relegation final as county champions, and they're not. Like so, I suppose for them, like it was I suppose if there's one way to. I think last year, if you win your last game, you're either the champion or you stay up. So like they've only won 1 game this year, and that was enough to keep them senior. So they'll be happy. Well, happy with the way things finished, but that's not happy with the year as a whole.
Yeah, Eamon, hopefully you can hear us a little bit better this time. If not, I suppose we can try again another time. But I'm not sure. Did you get a chance to see Killer One's victory over Upperchurch Strumban? Niall O'Mara was very good. It ended up winning it by 4 for a finish, but at times they were very impressive. No, I think we'll just leave it there with Eamon at this stage. Yeah, like looking at the players who did the scoring in that match, Jerome Cahill got just a point. Seamus Hennessy won 1. Kieran Cahill got 3. Aaron Morgan, he was quite good. He got himself 3 points. 1-7 for Willie Cleary, like you're saying there. A point for Keane Darcy. Were there times watching this match where you're looking at Killer One thinking, geez, you know what? And like Upperchurch are a very good team. There's times here, if they were humming from the start of the summer, they could have had themselves in the mix. Oh,
look, quite possibly. I think they got shocked by Toom in the first game. Like I suppose the 10 points would have, I suppose psychologically would have hurt them, and then they picked up a few injuries, and like they were blitzed probably for a 10 minutes period against Ross Gray where they went behind and they couldn't get back and were narrowly beaten by McCarthy. So look, there was a lot of ifs, buts and maybes, but like I suppose if you were Killer One, you'd look back on last year's championship and think that there was a couple of times where maybe we could have got knocked out and didn't earlier before we went on that run. So look, you have to take the rough with the smooth, and look, there's no doubt like last year Toom won that county championship with a very, very thin panel. Like they were really running off 16 or 17 players, and it arguably it was a little weaker this year. Like Sean McAdams wasn't there this year. Cian O'Kelly went off to America during the summer. I don't think he was up to the level of what he can do. Keane Darcy had a quieter year. Jerome Cahill showed bits and pieces, but there's no doubt overall I think they never quite hit the pitch last year. And that was always going to be difficult.
Yeah, Eamon, I suppose we'll ask you about Killenaule Rossmore beating JK Brackens and how Brackens went. And, you know, it's probably tough having to wait in the wings for a while as Killenaule were still playing in the county championship. So maybe they were that bit sharper. But what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I know it was 118 to 115. Killenaule did drive a lot of wides, if I'm being brutally honest with you, in the second half. Brackens had a very good first half. Coming off, like, don't underestimate the last Paddy Cadell was at the start of the year to Brackens. The Moneygall home game we struggled with. Nina, we struggled with a great win over Drum. So we had momentum going in as regards the Drum win and also the football, some good wins in the football. Very good first half, but Killenaule, they left a lot behind them. They had a lot of wides. The one tactic they did, and they got it right, they pushed right up at the start of the second half, and the Brackens shot puckouts, they forced Brackens to go long, and their half back line just absolutely destroyed our half forward line under the high ball. But look, they were in the huddle afterwards. It's a tough 2 weeks now for Brackens, obviously, and Upperchurch. 12 months is a long time when you look back. Upperchurch got Brackens out of the football last year and the hurling. Now this year, Brackens could knock Upperchurch out of the football at the weekend and relegate them, or vice versa. So two teams that are not in a good place with the hurling, but two teams in a very good place with the football. But overall, if I'm being honest with you, Killenaule were the stronger team on the day.
Shane?
Yeah, no, I fancy Brackens going into this one. I did wonder where Killenaule's mentality of being involved in relegation after getting to a county quarter final, but like from the off, they were right up for it. They were sharp. Robert Doyle was very good at full forward. John O'Keefe was strong. Like they were really good. And I suppose in those conditions, Killenaule are a big physical team, and Brackens are a little lighter, and certainly I think it aided. Like if you had I suppose Brackens like to work the ball through the lines, and in those conditions, if your touch is a small bit off, or if you get a ball and you're given a big hit here, it's going to dislodge the ball, and it's harder to, like, the Brackens goal was probably Brackens at their best, like a brilliant move, like, but the Brackens were just not able to do enough of those moves right through the game.
And this weekend, Eamon, we might let you go because the connection just isn't great. How do you see Brackens and Upperchurch going this Saturday?
Look, it's going to be, from a football point of view, Upperchurch took us in the semi-final, or the final last year in Holy Cross. Jack Butt lost Upperchurch in both goals. Jack Butt is missing now. He's a very, very established footballer. He's missing. Tom Murphy picked up an injury in the hurling last week, which he had a broken finger, and hopefully he'll be back. As I said, Paddy Cadell is back to his best now. I'd slightly fancy Brackens. There could be from the pressure on, but a slight fancy us in football at the weekend. I think we've shown good form in football right through. The Killenaule again the last day were by far the better team. So I think Upperchurch went the penalties last.
I think unfortunately the connection just isn't great, so we might leave it at that. But we appreciate Eamon Corcoran coming on.
Yeah, just go back. Yeah, it's just look, it's going to be tough for I suppose whoever's relegated. I suppose Brackens only came up in 2018. So, but like they're a good solid club, and you look at Upperchurch got to a semi-final last year, and they've been senior probably since the mid 90s. Like so, you're going to have, and look, they'll probably find themselves in position just because they've had a slightly down year. So I would think that the prize, I suppose, assuming, as I know I have a story done this week of Premier Intermediate, if it is Laura or Cashel that goes up, like it's the year to try and get up, because you're going to have a big fish coming down from senior into Premier Intermediate next year.
And you know, if you look at the teams that are in the relegation, like, for example, Brackens, they were missing lads at the start of the year. Killenaule, they were missing lads at the start of the year. I'm not sure if you quite say the same about Upperchurch and Killenaule, but it just kind of shows that if you don't have your panel together at the start of the season, you could find yourself in bother. Like, these are really good teams, all 4 teams in relegation. You know, obviously a couple of them are out there now at this stage, but all those teams are really, really strong. But you just have to be starting on the front foot.
No, that's it. Look, and like, if Brackens, in fairness, like, they would probably say that the key game for them in the group was the first one against Mullinahone in the hurling. Like, and they would have said that's with Drum and in with Nina, that was your, on paper going into it, that was your most winnable game. And like there were Paddy Cadell wasn't there. I think Conor Cadell was only coming back from America. So like, they weren't at their best, and you could see that they got incrementally better after that. So look, I think that's an element, I suppose, of the split season that's probably going to be a problem long term, is that how do you get guys home from America on time, particularly like if, like, most club championships are starting now, you say August bank holiday weekend, you say a week after the All-Ireland football final, just for better argument. And I just wonder, would there be pressure maybe on the American associations to bring forward their county finals a week or two earlier, just so that they're finished and lads could be home, if you know what I mean? Because lads are sort of hanging around in America because they feel obligated to finish finals over there, which is fair enough. Like, they've taken the few pounds to go over, like, then, but maybe the US associations could finish their finals a week or two earlier, so lads are under less pressure maybe to hang around, and maybe they can get home and help their clubs out.
Yeah, but ultimately you want fewer players go over, because when teams in Tipperary and other counties start to see that if you start poorly, you're in bother straight away, there's going to be more pressure on lads not to head abroad. And then ultimately the teams over in America, or the county boards over there, are going to say, we need to finish this up sooner because lads aren't going to come.
And then you could potentially have guys maybe who will go over playing under illegally because clubs won't sign the sanction form, because, like, say a lad comes home early but he's already played the side, like, you can't, I think you can, once you sign it and maybe it's 30 days or 60 days, even if you come home early and you're still sanctioned to the other club, you can't play. So I think it's something that does need a bit of tidying up, all right.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to the Premier Intermediate. So we've already talked about Laura and against Cashel King Cormac. That's been refixed. Killenaule then edged out by Thurles' second team. That's got to really sting for Killenaule to be, been beaten by a second team.
Yeah, no, it's I'm not sure whether you've probably experienced it. Like, it's psychologically, it's not nice to be thinking. Killenaule would always felt maybe over the years that we were at Thurles' level, we're there, but like not be able to beat their second team now, that's gonna sting, like, because, and look, they were justifiably beaten at the weekend, 221 to 313, and look, the difference was, and I watched a lot of it, Thurles were just used the ball better. They took their chances. They were just clinical in front of goal. They didn't take bad shots. Like Killenaule, I don't know whether they were nervous or we got some of their shooting was terrible. Their decision making, the shots they were taking on, not used. I think their wides tally was very, very high, and you could say if they'd taken their chances, they could have won. But like overall, the team that used the ball better, even Thurles had. Killenaule dominated the ball, but what ball Thurles had, they made better use of.
And sure, like Thurles, of course, have massive playing reserves there, and I presume it's that brilliant combination, like when of a second team in any club that's going well, of experienced lads like Michael Cahill there, who's just completely kind of holding everything together, and maybe young up and coming lads who'll be hoping to get through to the senior ranks in the next couple of years. That's
it. You have David Maher there at full back. Has played previously at senior level, Aidan Ryan. I think Michael Cahill has had an outstanding season at centre back. You can imagine with a young team, like, to have a leader like that, and like I think he's been man of the match in a lot of their games in the last few weeks. Like, the ball is like a magnet to him at centre back, and like in fairness, I think any team, I suppose, whether it's Laura or Cashel in the final, again, you've got to keep the ball away from the centre. You've got to try and drag Michael out of position if you can at all, because like he's just too good. And looking up at the forwards, like Robbie Stapleton got 1-2, Liam McCormack 2 points, like Jack Lanigan, he got 1-4 from play, but he had a couple of monster points when he was given a sort of a free roll in around midfield, half forward line in the second half when Sarsfields were coming under pressure. Like, I would have thought when Killenaule got the goal from the penalty midway through the second half to bring it back to a 3-point game or 2-point game, you said Killenaule are going to kick on from here, but Sarsfields were very, very comfortable. Like, after that, you never felt they were under real pressure. Like, Killenaule were pumping ball into the square, but there was nothing breaking for them. And look, I suppose, like John O'Dwyer was a ferocious loss. Whether his presence on the day would have made a difference is hard to know, but I would have thought that Killenaule would have had enough quality on the field to win that game, but ultimately they didn't.
Yeah, and I suppose, just moving on then to the next thing, the football this weekend. I'm just going to get
just before we move away from Premier Intermediate, like it does create an interesting scenario if Sarsfields go on to win the county final in that grade. That I suppose we've seen it in Waterford with Ballygunner last year, where they opted not to go senior. Like, I just clarified it this week, is that the option, if Thurles go on and win, they can go senior and have 2 senior teams, but they also have the option of staying Premier Intermediate, which is okay. But the issue arises then was there's nothing within the regulations that voids the relegation process. So that would mean if Thurles win and they don't decide we're staying Premier Intermediate, you'd only have 15 teams in senior next year and 17 in Premier Intermediate. And of course, the 17-team intermediate breaks the national rules where you can only have 16-team competitions. So be interesting to see what happens. I'm sure maybe silently the county CCC are hoping that Laura or Cashel takes the problem out of their hands. But I think there's definitely something that's going to be tidied up in the competition regulations for next year, that it's not just happening senior, but maybe in other grades where maybe a team already has a team in a higher grade, and that maybe you avoid the relegation process. You'd spare maybe Brackens or being down just to keep those 16 teams in place.
Yeah, do you know then, and this might be catching you on the hop with this, but if Thurles did go with 2 teams at senior level next year, if they won the Premier Intermediate, is there anything to stop both teams being drawn in the same county group? And could you potentially have both teams playing in the mid?
It did happen in 2021 when Sars, I suppose, when the old format where the Seamus Arena and the Dan Breen Cup were linked, and Sars had 2 mid-senior teams, but they didn't end up being they were kept separate, and they never ended up playing each other. But there were technically, one was Dan Breen, one was Seamus Arena, but I think next year potentially, if it happens, would be a lot different. It was like, I think a lot of the clubs would look at it and say, like, you can't make a special case for Thurles, the second team. Like if Thurles Sarsfields' first team is a 4th seed and their 4th team is a 4th seed, are you manipulating the draw then? I don't think you can do that. I think the draw could potentially see them in the same group. Like I don't think a lot of the clubs would allow a situation where Sarsfield's second team are given special treatment. What if maybe Sarsfield's second team benefits from being in an easier group, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
By not being paired and not being permitted to be paired with their first team. So
it makes it a little bit tasty. Well, actually, rather than jumping on to Camogie, we might as well talk about the intermediate. So, having watched Borris-Ileigh Duala against Moneygall at the weekend, that was fairly thrilling game. I mean, the conditions were very, very tough for the players, and after extra time, if you were told you'd have a grand total of 25 scores, you'd think we were raving lunatics. But it finished 112-12. Borris-Ileigh, I suppose they edged it out. They dug in. They got a goal from a fortuitous long free during normal time, which meant that Moneygall were probably chasing for the rest of the game. Moneygall were in a great spot early on. But were Borris-Ileigh full value as far as you were concerned?
Like there was very, very little between them, but I suppose that first period of extra time when Borris-Ileigh rattled off 4 points in a row, like that was the key period. Like with the win behind them at the start of extra time, they really went for it. And like that 4-point run was ultimately the difference. Like in those conditions, it's better you get a fortuitous goal like Borris-Ileigh got to get ahead in normal time, or to get them back in the game. It was very, very hard for Moneygall to come back, and like their forwards were well beaten, I thought, from halftime onwards in terms of ball winning. Maybe the likes of Bob Kenny, I thought, had a big game. Sean Kennelly, Joe Fogarty, Paddy Fogarty, all well tied down. Like, it was a great defensive performance, I thought, by Borris-Ileigh. Jura Dwyer was powerful at centre back, really, really good. And look, it's a massive win for Borris-Ileigh, and like from 2018 when they were a junior club, now they're on the cusp of being back in the second tier. And look, they're going to go into that final as favourites, but it's up against Golden Confica, like the darling, the fairy tale story of this year, where the last round of the group stage, they stood over 21-yard free, I think, against Ballingarry, a draw match. They were facing relegation. The ball goes in the back of the net. They end up finishing second in the table with the new scoring rule. If the old scoring rule was in place, they would have finished third. Now they've ended up in the final against their next door neighbours, and they're just a serious measure of momentum with them at the moment to say that they will feel they can go all the way.
Yeah, and like just also back to the Moneygall Borris-Ileigh Duala game, like Borris-Ileigh, I thought they had some players who were excellent and dangerous throughout the game. But like, on the other side of it, I thought James Carroll was very good midfield for Moneygall. I was just a bit surprised when he was taken off. I thought Sean Fogarty as well as Bob Kenny, I thought both of them were very good.
I thought Phil Fanning was powerful at full back, wasn't he? Real old. Yeah. Oh, Jesus, like I felt sorry for him. Like, he didn't deserve to be on the losing team. He hit some amount of ball in the game. Yeah,
I know Squirrel well, and at one stage he went to drive a ball up the field at one stage and the hurley went flying, so I had a little smirk for that. But Brendan too, he's been out for a while. He probably wasn't, his full self, because normally he's very dynamic on the ball. And Cathal Green continues to be very good. Dylan Fogarty got some great scores from long distance for Borris-Ileigh Duala. Is there anyone else that would have really impressed you for them?
I suppose Seamus Leahy is always a very, very tidy player, full forward. Like Dara Hickey, a blast from the past with Tip. Like, great seeing him still contributing at a high level there at corner forward as well. So look, it's a great win for Borris-Ileigh. And I suppose the only pity was that those two teams got the worst of the conditions on the weekend, Saturday lunchtime, when the rain was absolutely leathering down. And look, I think both, particularly, look, I would know Moneygall more than Borris-Ileigh. I'm sure Borris-Ileigh would prefer the drier sod, but I think Moneygall would definitely prefer the drier sod. But look, it is what it is. And look, it's back to the start for Moneygall next year. And like, it's going to be even tougher for them now next year with Portrue having dropped back from Premier Intermediate. So that's not only one good team in the county, like that's a tougher North Championship to try and win as well. So I suppose after losing last year's final as well, like, and losing the semi-final the year before, like, it's just shows you, like, it's the closer you get, and every time you miss out, it's going to get harder and harder the whole time. But they have enough talent to stay at it. Like, and their junior B team are in a county semi-final. So look, if they can get them to maybe win that out and end the year in a high, it's a bit of something to take into next year.
Yeah, and speaking of that Portrue Newport game, I think Portrue got some late goals or late chances, and Kevin O'Halloran stood over a late 21-yard free. It was blocked, and they go down. Like, Newport would be delighted to get out of there. Yeah,
I know. And in fairness, I think Newport were full value for the win. Like, the Portrue had only gotten 2 late goals to even bring it back within 3 points. Like, Newport really pushed on in the second half, and like, look, it's nothing I would expect from Portrue. Like, they died with the roots on. They didn't throw in the towel. They nearly, like, I would have given Kevin O'Halloran every chance to score in that 21-yard free, because like, he has a fair shot and he puts top spin on it as well. And fair play to the Newport rear guard that they held firm. And look, it was a year that never really got going for Newport. Like, I think they were missing 8 players from last year's team, maybe for various reasons. And look, if they get a good chunk of them back next year, and like, they have their minor team won the County Minor B Championship last weekend. So if they, maybe 1 or 2 of the good lads off that maybe could step up next year, I'm sure they'll be stronger at a Premier Intermediate level going forward. But so yeah, it's tough for Portrue. 1990 was the last time they were down intermediate. So and that was a time when intermediate was second grade. So like, it's down to third grade for Portrue. And look, they're a club that are playing a lot of C grade hurling and underage, just primarily because of numbers. Like, they barely able to field 13 aside teams. Look, but look, they'll make the best of it. I'd have no fear of them, and they maybe get Mulrooney and AJ Willis back next year. They'll be hard to beat next year.
So, like, Golden Kilfeacle beating Kilsheal and Kilcash 121-212. Is it a simple case of Mark Yo got sent off in the final minute of the first half after an incident with Shane O'Connell, and that was the difference between the teams?
It certainly didn't help. Like, he's their marquee player, and look, when that doesn't happen, when he goes off, you're losing a leader in your attack. And I suppose the busy schedule probably came against them too. Even with the 6-day turnaround from the penalty shootout against Upperchurch in the football, that wouldn't have helped either. And just it's just sometimes maybe with Golden, once Golden got off to a good start, they were in a great spot. And like, you have a team that has Jack Leamy, Ian Ormond, Ben Corrigan, Shawnee Hallen, really good, strong young players, Niall Heffernan, big strong unit in the forward line. So like, it'd be incredible, like, if they were to go and finish it off. And just I see when they were really struggling a few weeks ago, they brought in Conor Gleeson as coach, Conor Borris-Ileigh, and I believe I was just reading something on the Tipperary Live website that he came in on the basis that I'll help you out, but if we end up meeting Borris-Ileigh and I have to step away, and like, that's happening now. So like, yeah, and it's purely understandable. Like, you can imagine Conor Gleeson, part of the team that won that county final in 96, and it had very fitting and appropriate the way it's after working out with the curtain raiser for the senior final is the intermediate final, Borris-Ileigh and Golden, and the Jubilee team honour that year is the 96 Borris-Ileigh team. The Jubilee things are out of kilter a small bit because of COVID. There was no Jubilee teams done in 2021, so they're playing catch up. So it's just worked out that it's 27 years that this year's Borris-Ileigh, and they're fittingly involved in county final day. And you have Conor Gleeson probably going from Well, he won't be in the sideline. He'll have to put on the shirt and tie probably, unless he's. It's. I presume maybe some of the backroom team probably played in that final all those years. William Hickey, he certainly did anyway. James Tarrant, like so. It's going to be a good final, and I think there's a small portion of the boundary between the two clubs touches each other, so there'll be a bit of chawing too, like they're cross divisional teams.
Yeah, like if you get involved with teams and they're in the same division or same competitions, these things can happen. I remember last year was that Ballybay's joint manager Jerome Johnson, I should say, stepped away saying I just couldn't manage against my own children when they came up against Kilcoo. We obviously saw that the Kiladangan coach George Hannigan, he's obviously part of Shannon Rovers. They were up against Kiladangan's second team. I found it out this year, having to manage against Coola in the first round of the championship.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Do you think it's a little bit different when there's something like relegation at stake? Or sorry, a championship at stake?
I don't know. Look, purely on the basis that if Golden understood, I'm sure when Golden drafted in Connor, they probably thought it's just about survival now. And look, well, it's about staying up. I'm sure they didn't want to go back Junior A. And maybe, I suppose, long shot they were thinking, maybe if we played in a quarter final or drawn against them but like, I suppose a county final, and I don't know, could you live with yourself in Borris-Ileigh if you trained a team that denied you a chance to go up to the next level? I don't think you could, like, so. And I don't know whether Connor there's no Gleeson on the Borris-Ileigh 30 I can see there, but that doesn't mean he's not related to some of the guys on the team. So well, look, once there was an agreement in place that if the two clubs were to meet, that Connor would maybe step aside. Look, I think that's fair enough. Like, so. Yeah,
and you know what? They've had the several weeks of training under him.
Yeah.
What, they'll have to get through 4 or 5 training sessions in the meantime. I'm sure everything's out. They kind of have their flow at this stage, so it basically shouldn't mean any excuses either.
It would have been weird. I know the winner of this doesn't go on to Munster, but it would have been interesting if, just say, if Golden won, and then Connor comes back into the dressing room for the Munster campaign. Like,
what did I miss, lads?
Yeah. So, I suppose it's winner chicken dinner for both clubs. It's the last game of the year for both clubs on Sunday week.
Yeah, the relegation semi-final, or the relegation final, I should say, Upperchurch Strumban beat Kiladangan 220-413. That's back-to-back relegations for Kiladangan. And we see the Thurles beat a second team going in the other direction. And again, if we're saying that that's a sign of strength of Thurles, is this a sign of maybe the depth isn't going to be there as much with Kiladangan anymore?
It's probably a fair statement, all right, because look, you're going from Kiladangan 2 years ago, they were in the Premier Intermediate quarter final, and now they're back playing Junior A hurling next year. Like, it probably shows maybe the peak in terms of the complete package of Kiladangan is probably slipping beyond their senior. The quality and maybe the depth is, like, there's a lot of experience on that Kiladangan second team, but there's a lot of guys, a lot of miles on the clock too. Like, so, and you would have said underage level, while they're still doing pretty well, they're not bringing through the dominant A teams they were maybe in that 10-year period up to 2 or 3 years ago, like, so they were getting to A finals regularly, like, so. But look, that's not to say that they won't bounce back. It's just the way things happened for them this year. They can get it's like anything. If you get on a losing run, it's very hard to win games.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. The Tip football final, we'll come to the Camogie in a little while, but the Tip football semi-finals are this weekend. Upperchurch against Brackens, which we kind of touched on with Eamon Corcoran there, and he was mentioning a couple of injuries and absences at different sides. And Clonmel Commercials against Mile Rovers. Are we just expecting Clonmel Commercials to roll over yet another team?
I would think so, but I suppose the fact it's a local derby, the two teams know each other very, very well. Mile Rovers will set up pretty defensively and try and keep the thing as tight as they can. Would be interesting, would Clonmel still play the all-out attacking football against a team like that and maybe get picked off in the counter-attack? Who knows? But I'd be fascinated I'd love to see Clonmel take that style of football they played the last few weeks and really go at it and see what it's like. really go at my Rovers, but then they will get a test. Like, it's a local derby, like there's no doubt about it. But I still fancy Commercials to get through. The other semi-final on Saturday, I think this will be tight. But I do think, like, Upperchurch have done nothing wrong this year. They've won all their games. Eamon has mentioned TJ Butler's a big loss from last year. Like, it's a big physical presence. But I just think Brackens have played the slightly better football this year. They have a good scoring range to their forward line, and just on the basis maybe that they lost last year's quarter final, they might overturn the result this weekend.
Yeah, okay, let's move on to the Camogie Championship. So we'll start off with Borris-Ileigh against Killenaule Rossmore. So Killenaule won by a point. The previous game that I'd seen earlier on at the group stages, Kiladangan wasn't playing. Of course, she ended up being the key player here. But Borris-Ileigh weren't scoring the goals in that game. Killenaule were. That was flipped on its head here, 16 points to 3-6. As a Borris-Ileigh person, how how far have Borris come this year?
Oh, to command massively. Like, it's I think let's go forward. I presume that's the semi-finals in football. If you know, the Brackens Upperchurch game is on Saturday in the Rag at 4, and Commercials and my Rovers in Ardfinnan on Sunday at 2:00. So no, they're separate games. But back to the Camogie. Look, Borris-Ileigh, intermediate champions last year, to get up to a semi-final in their first year back up and to get within 1 point of Killenaule. Look, I'm sure it hurts them to come up that small bit short. But look, overall, their campaign was, for what is essentially a young group of players, was very, very good. And having Nicole Walsh and Teresa Ryan back here was huge, and bringing in some of the younger girls there as well. Like, it is I think overall a great campaign for them. And I suppose at least maybe bringing an improved performance than what they brought against Killenaule in the round robin stage. So, and look, it took a Kiladangan winner with a long range, 13 points out of 16 she got. So just shows what a performer she is. And like, it's the fourth final in a row for Killenaule. They've lost the previous 3, and they're still searching for that first one. Like, so I think they'll probably have the support of everybody in the county to maybe finally break their duck. But like, they're coming up against that Drum and Inch team that are finding it hard to be beaten too, even though Thurles gave them a right good go on Saturday.
Yeah, and like, can I latch on to a little bit more by saying that Killenaule scored 6 points from playing the entire game, 3 from Kiladangan, 2 from Courtney Ryan, 1 from Kate Ryan, whereas Borris-Ileigh scored 3-2 from play, which obviously translates to 11. Aoife Fitzgerald and Danielle Ryan with one apiece, and Ava Beavens with a goal. So again, it's just
you have to cut out the fouling. Cut out the fouling.
Yeah, yeah, that could be it. But to be fair, the way Killenaule used the ball in the forward line, they probably force you to at times because they're very good at getting through the lines. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no, look, their seasoned team, like Claudia Quirk, Cotabani, Emer Loughmore, like the court Casey Hennessy, like, and look, they're running out of time now. They're back in the final now, and look, they'll be underdogs, but look, they've got to produce their biggest performance ever, I think, to beat Drum and Inch. Like, Drum were in big trouble on Saturday midway through the second half against Sarsfields. Like, they were behind, but look, they got a couple of goals, got their noses in front and hung on for a finish. So like, they're still hard beaten. Like, it's just so exciting, I think, for me over the next 4 or 5 years, that the competitiveness of that Camogie Championship. But for years, like, it was maybe Duhara and Drum and everyone else a long way behind. Now you have, it looks like, even though Drum are still, there's very little between a lot of the clubs, like, and like, you have potentially Shannon Rovers probably coming up, and like, they will be stronger than potentially Nina team that could be relegated. And like, you have a really good 10-team strong competitive championship, and it's I'm sure Dennis Kelly would have been very, very interested in some of the performances last weekend. Look, like Sequiva Stakeland or Thurles Sarsfields, like, if probably looking for a few more scoring forwards for Tip to maybe take the pressure off Kiladangan and things like that at senior level, as she did her chances no harm at all.
Yeah, 5 in a row for Drum would be a fair achievement if they do it.
Absolutely, and you think that's off the back of Duhara winning 7 in a row. So it's between two clubs that have dominated, but look, they'll be favourites. I think the 21st of October is that final. It's not for another couple of weeks, so I'm sure both clubs will come in fresh and eager. And they produced a great final last year, and I'm sure it'll be the same again.
Yeah, and just the scores for Drum in that game: Eamon McGrath, I should say, he had won 3. Aoife McGrath, Siobhan McGrath, they had 1 apiece, and then Niamh Tracy and Joanne had a couple of points apiece. Miriam Campion had 1 point each. And you mentioned Caoimhe Stapleton, she scored 13 points, 9 were frees. Karen Kendi, who had a great season for Tip, got 2, and Aoife O'Dwyer got 1. So would you make an early prediction on the final?
You can't look past Drum, but maybe Drum and Killenaule, you'd love to see them do it, because they've never won it before. I think they've lost 4 finals before. I think they lost 1 to Dohara and 3 to Drum, the last 3 to Drum. So you'd love to see them do it just for a bit of freshness sake, but Drum will have an awful lot to say about that.
Yeah, 3 Tipperary players nominated for Hurling All-Stars this year. I don't think we could have any complaints.
No, I don't think. I wouldn't have expected any more than that. I know there was, I think it was on your show that maybe Alan Tynan maybe, but I think after the Cork game, I don't think Alan, bar the Offaly match, and you couldn't take too much of that. Alan was a bit peripheral, but no, they were the main 3. Ronan had a very strong campaign. Even in the game against Waterford, when I think everybody underperformed, he was the shining light. Noel, very, very strong first 3 games, but probably wasn't as strong after that. Jake Morris, brilliant start against Clare. He didn't. So he did play against Cork. He didn't play against Waterford. He was injured for that. Very good against Offaly and quite. So I think they were worthy nominees, but I don't think there's a much of a chance of them making up the final 15.
Yeah, and then I suppose Congress at the weekend, special Congress even, 9 of the 11 motions were ratified by delegates at Croke Park. The only motion that was defeated was motion 1, which proposed to abolish the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship preliminary quarterfinals, which linked, of course, with the Joe McDonagh Cup finalists. So that was defeated with 51% voting against it. And then there was a motion 2, which was linked to it, so that automatically didn't come into play as well. I have to say, I think it's so disappointing that this wasn't passed, because not only does it affect the Inter-County Championship, the top-tier Liam McCarthy Championship, and most of these games are just like one-sided, especially when the runners-up comes through. But also it means that the Joe McDonagh will continue to be rushed through when that competition could do with another month has been played out, and give them each team more of a chance to develop.
It looks to me like the GPA survey of the players is what swung maybe a lot of the counties that were sitting on the fence. I know Tipperary were voting for the link to be removed at the county board meeting last week. So I just think it's from the players' point of view, I can see why they'd like it kept. But I would have thought winning the McDonagh Cup is the prize for the year. And people say there's no carrot, but the carrot is you get into the Leinster Championship next year, or you get 5 big championship games. I know there was the Carlow representative said that there was a great buzz around Carlow in the lead up to the Dublin game, and Jersey's but that's great. But then they're going to have that next year anyway, when they have maybe Kilkenny or Galway coming to Dr. Cullen Park and a big crowd. So I'm disappointed, because I think it's a missed opportunity, because I think, as you say, this competition could be stretched on another month. You look at the All-Ireland semi-finals, they're only half filled as Croke Park. If you put the McDonagh final on with one of them, you're getting up towards 70,000 people, 80,000 people. I keep making a point. Kerry, Laois and Kildare and Down were all finished hurling in the middle of May this year, purely because they had to rush it off so they knew who the 2 finalists were. And then because the 2 finalists have to be ready for an All-Ireland preliminary quarter final, whereas if you take the link out, you buy yourself at least another 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, and the competition is brilliant, but it's really, really good. I don't think it would lose anything by having a bit more time, a bit more wiggle room in there. I'll just go through some of the other motions that were passed, and you can give your thoughts at the end. So motion 3 proposed to introduce a tiered knockout competition for the All-Ireland Minor Football Championship. That was supported by 93%. Motion 4, that was passed, it proposed the introduction of preliminary quarterfinals in the All-Ireland Minor Hurling Championship. That involved the 3rd and 4th place teams in Munster and Leinster. It also proposed Galway and Ulster teams, as agreed by the Ulster and Leinster councils.
That's interesting. Like, you're looking at Munster now, 4 of the 5 teams will get out of Munster, which is, it probably takes the competitive edge out of it a small bit. But look, if it's more development and teams get to stay in the championship longer, I'm all for it.
Yeah, well, to me, it's the development in terms of, like, it's not like other sports. Let's say soccer, sometimes you go out and you just phone it in a little bit and you go through the motions. When you're playing a hurling match, because it's such blood and thunder, and I'd say the same for Gaelic football, it is just going to be development. Fair enough, you might, give other lads an opportunity as well. No real downside to that. And then ultimately we'll get to the cut and trust later on in the season.
Plus, you get a real feel for which province is best. Like, if you start getting 4 Munster teams and 3 Munster teams regularly, or 3 Leinster teams in an All-Ireland semi-final.
Yeah, and just to finish out the point, Galway and the Ulster teams, as agreed by the 2 councils, those 2 provincial councils, they'll compete in the Leinster Minor Championship. Motion 5, that'll allow provincial councils to organise round-robin championships at under 20 levels. 95% of delegates supported that. Motion 6 proposed that all Ireland finals be played on or before the last Sunday in July. That was supported by 90%. Happy enough with that?
Yeah.
I know you are, yeah. Motion 7 makes it mandatory that a county central council delegate also be a member of the county's management committee. That was supported by 97% of delegates. Motion 8.
I think Tip already do that, but I think maybe some other counties didn't. But just back to the minor football one, I think that's another great idea, particularly for the likes of Tipperary, where invariably Cork and Kerry probably most years will get to a Munster final, so they get to the tier 1. And to say if Tipperary get to a semi-final, they will go into a tier 2 section, which is playing maybe teams from other provinces that they wouldn't ordinarily get to play, and and it sends their season, which will only be good for their development as well.
Yeah, Motion 8 then, that proposed that allowing a central council delegate to serve a second 5-year term after a 5-year period has elapsed following the first term. That was supported by 88% of delegates, which is no surprise, really. The turkeys weren't going to vote for Christmas there. And then Motion 9 proposed achieving and maintaining a gender balance in the membership of the Central Council Management Committee. That was supported by 79% of delegates. Now, my only issue with that is I don't really care whether it's 100% men or 100% women or 90% one or the other. I just want the best people doing the job.
I'm the very same. I hate these gender quotas things, but look, I understand it. I
don't. And I tell you why I don't. Yeah. Because the opportunity is there for anyone to work their way up. Anyway, there's, like, look at clubs over the years. How many people, how many clubs have women on the board? Like, there's no issue at all. But, like, it has to be about the best person for the job. If you had a surgeon doing your surgery and you're told, well, look, it's going to be one of these now. Some of them are in there because of their gender and some are in because they're best at the job. You want whoever's best at the job if you want. And, like, I don't know. I just think it's unnecessary. Anyway, we'll move on to the next motion, number 10, that proposed reformatting the GA's official guide so that rules related to procedures and policies would become the responsibility of Central Council rather than Congress and be known as codes. That was supported by 86. And then motion 11 proposed that a player must have celebrated his 17th birthday prior to January 1st of the championship year in order to be eligible to play at adult level. And it gave a county committee the flexibility to increase this minimum eligibility for specific competitions or circumstances through a competition relegated regulation. That was supported by 91%. What do you think of that?
It's an interesting one to see what counties adopt that one, like, because it gives you flexibility to maybe allow 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds to play, but then it is, how does it affect you? You have the complication maybe of crossing code. Listen to see how that goes going forward.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, that's it for the show today. If you want to pick up a copy of the Nina Guardian, it's in stores locally now. Shane, we'll chat to you later on.
Talk to you next week.